And, you know, okay, so here she is. She was born into royalty, raised royally, probably never had anything, want of anything. I think they say now that the Windsors, that's the family that is the king and the queen of England. I think they say that Queen Elizabeth is the richest woman in the world, which probably has Hillary upset. But they asked Queen Victoria, what are you most thankful for? Now, what would you be thankful for? You know, if nothing else, guys, you know what you ought to be thankful for? You ought to be thankful you're in this country. You know, this is a good country to be in. And so, you know, maybe just being in England as opposed to, you know, some terrible third world country, that would be something to be thankful for. Maybe to be thankful that she was the queen, the monarch of the British Empire. Maybe to be thankful that she had pretty good health. I don't know. What would she be thankful for? And so this guy said, what are you most thankful for? And she said, I am, of all things, I am the most thankful for the letter M. The guy said, excuse me? He said, she said, I am thankful for the letter M. That puzzles you, does it not? I'm not even going to tell you why. Let's go to another point. No, I said, and they said, why are you thankful for the letter M? And she quoted this verse from 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and verse 26. She said, for you see your calling, brethren, how that not many wise men after the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble are called. She said, I am noble. I am born of nobility. I am a noble person. She wasn't boasting, that was it. She was nobility. And she said, if it were not for the letter M in that verse, it would say not any noble. But she said it says not many. And she said, because there's an M on that word, I got saved. And so, guys, who would think that not many? You say, what do you mean not many? Well, I'll tell you, King James was saved. King James was a saved man, guys. You know, the Understandable History has a real good chapter on him. He was not a homosexual. If you even believe that, you are taken in. Look, you think Trump is getting ravaged by the fake news? Nobody has ever been ravaged by fake news like King James. And King James was not a homosexual. In fact, he hated effeminacy. He wrote a book to his sons. His first son, who's going to be the king after him, called the Basilican Dorian, which was Doran. It was the kingly gift. And you know what he did? He was teaching his son how to be a good king. And he said, stay away from anything that is effeminate. He said that homosexuality was a sin that should never be forgiven, neither murder. And you know what he did? In that book, he told his son that your first obligation is to God, and your first one is to serve God, and your second one is to serve your people. Boy, don't a lot of kings have that backwards? And so he was a very humble person. He was a very smart person. He was a well-educated person. I don't know if you realize this, but many monarchs never learned to read and write. You say, why? Well, what are they trying to get higher in life? I mean, they're king. Okay, how do you go up from there? So you learn to read and write so you can get this job and then work up to this job and work up to this. The guy starts out as king. If he wants to read something, he has all kinds of people who say, read this to me. And so a lot of them are illiterate. But King James was an educated man. At the age of 8, he could read a chapter of the Bible from Greek. He could translate the Greek into French, then translate the French into English at 8 years old. He used to, though he did read a lot, he loved to read so much that when he was eating his meals, he would have somebody standing behind him with some kind of a book, just reading the book, like an audio book, just so he could hear the reading. And King James trusted Jesus Christ as his personal Savior. And there are people that they have been cruel to him, they've been unkind to him, they've been unfair to him. But I'm going to tell you, it says it doesn't say not any noble, it says not many. And King James got in on that. And Queen Victoria, the one that I just told you about, she got in because it said not many noble. Pharaoh didn't make it. Pharaoh didn't make it. No, he didn't make it. I hate to say this, but I don't know if anybody in that ruling class in England is saved now. I don't know if Elizabeth is saved or not. I've never heard any testimony that she is, but I would be banking that none of the kids are. I doubt that Charles is saved, okay? Doesn't mean he can't be saved. It means he's not saved. And you know how I know he can be saved? Because it says not many, it doesn't say not any. That's the difference, just one little letter. It says not many mighty. I was just in Korea about 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago, and the pastor took me over to Incheon. And Incheon is where MacArthur landed the Marines during the Korean War. Now, if you're not familiar with the Korean War, on June 25th, 1950, the North Koreans crossed into South Korea and invaded it across the 38th parallel. And they swept down through that country. They came in from the north. If this is the DMZ, they came across the DMZ. They swept down, and they drove the American and the UN troops and the Korean Army into a little perimeter called the Pusan Pocket, the Pusan Perimeter. And they were about to literally push them into the sea. And President Truman put Douglas MacArthur, the great World War II leader, in charge of prosecuting that war. And he said, "Get me the Marines." And he said, "Guys, we're going to land at Incheon." Now, Incheon is about 50 miles away from Seoul. Seoul is only 30 miles south of the DMZ. Not this time, but the last time I was in Korea. I was in Seoul. We're riding through Seoul with my Korean pastor, and all of a sudden, air raid sirens go off. All the traffic goes to the side of the road, and army trucks filled with South Korean soldiers are shooting through town north. Now, I got news for you. I don't know what your plans are for the day, but you figure at that point they've all just changed. And when I saw those, I thought, oh man, the war started and I'm not going to get home. And I said, what is this? He said, just a drill. He said, they do this one day a month. He said, they're 30 miles north of us. If they cross the DMZ, they will be in downtown Seoul in 30 minutes. And he said, once a month, those sirens go off. Everybody gets out of the way of the soldiers because those soldiers are going to die. They know that's what they're going to do. They are just going to throw their bodies on the swords to try to slow down the North Koreans so that the government and all the people of Seoul can get out as many as possible. And so he said, I want to land the Marines at Incheon behind the North Korean army. And here's the problem with Incheon. Now, you've seen Marine landings, have you not? I mean, the landing craft goes up to the beach and the gate comes down and the Marines jump into maybe ankle deep, maybe neck deep water, run up a sandy beach, hide in the palm trees. Not Incheon. When they invaded, Incheon was an industrial complex. And where they landed, there was a 10-foot seawall. There was no beach. And one of the problems with Incheon, it happened when I was there, when the tide is out for 3 miles, it's mud. And they said, if we get these tides wrong, those landing craft will be out there stuck in the mud for 12 hours as artillery practice for the North Koreans. So on, I think it was September 19th, 1950, the Marines landed. And because there was no beach, here's what they did. Those sailors that were piloting those landing craft they didn't open the gate. They just put the front of the landing craft against that seawall, opened the throttles to hold it there. The Marines put up scaling ladders. Now you understand, here's the top of the wall, and the North Koreans they've got 30 and 50 caliber machine guns just grazing across the top of that wall. You pop your head up, it goes. And they still came over the wall. They still took Incheon. Then they started to cut the North Koreans off, and that's when the North Koreans turned around and headed back into the north. And just up from where they landed is, they call it Peace Park, and there's a monument that has MacArthur. I love MacArthur, I really do. But there's no evidence he ever trusted Christ. I have read his life, and almost all of his adult life, he read the Bible every single day. He was very knowledgeable about the Bible. So, well, then he must have. Well, you can't must have, people. Listen, if I could weasel somebody into heaven without getting them past the cross, I'd get MacArthur there. I'll tell you who else I'd get there. I'd get George Patton there. George Patton was a good general. If you ever read anything about MacArthur, if you read anything about Patton, you'll always read that they were very egotistical, kind of like what they say about our president. But that's because that's effeminate people, effeminate men that are writing about him, and they get upset about that. I don't know if you realize this, but when when on June 6th, 1945, when the Normandy invasion took place, the American and the Allies began to close up the German Second Army. They had just a little 3-mile area, and once they closed this up, they would trap the entire German Second Army, and it would shorten the war. The war might have been over by fall, and Patton's Third Army is going to close the door. Now you know how much he wants to do that, and he was told, "Stop, stand down, stay where you are." He didn't understand the order, but he obeyed the order. And they made him sit there until the Second Army escaped. Now, everybody this day says they don't know why they stopped Patton. I'll tell you what I think. This was 1944. I'm sorry, I said 45. This is June of 1944. If Patton had cut off the German Second Army, number one, he'd be famous for it, right? Plus, the war might have been over by fall, and Patton would have been in the White House in November. And so the powers that be had already anointed Eisenhower to be the president, and they couldn't let Patton be a hero. I don't know if you realize this. Patton is the one that liberated Paris, but they wouldn't let him enter the city because they knew his picture would be on the front page of every newspaper in the world. So they told Patton not to go in, and they let a colonel lead the troops in. So Patton was a great man. Patton, and by the way, Patton did not cuss. I've heard people say, he talked really foul. He talked foul to his soldiers. If you read his life story, there's not one foul word in it. And he said this. He said, "I talk that way to soldiers because that's how you have to communicate with them." Now, I'm not saying that's right, but that's when he cussed. He was very, very wealthy and very prim and proper. And I think Patton was in fact, here's what MacArthur wanted to do. MacArthur wanted to take China and just come west. And when the war was over, Patton wanted to give the Germans back their soldiers, turn them around and go after the Russians. And if those two guys would have been allowed to do what they wanted to in 1945, imagine how many millions of people would have not been murdered or died because of communism in China and Russia, the Soviet Union. And both those men were stopped. But the fact is, near as I can tell, I cannot find any evidence that George S. Patton was saved. You say, why? Because not many. Not many. But George Washington was saved. George Washington trusted Jesus Christ as his personal Savior. They tell me he was baptized by a Baptist preacher. Now, I say that so that you know, because I heard that. Now you've heard it. I don't know if I'm going to fight over that, but I have read some reports that he was Episcopalian, and that he trusted Christ, and that a Baptist preacher baptized him. And maybe he did, but he was a saved man. And I'm glad. I'm happy for him that he was a saved man. That was the father of our country. I don't know if you know this, but right after the revolution, right after the war for independence, when this nation was finally a young nation, the men in Congress offered him the position of king of the United States. And they said, "You can be King George the First." And he told them, he said, "Men, we just fought a war to stop this very thing." You have to understand, have you ever heard him called the father of our country? Well, that's where it happened. Because he could have been the king of our country. But he said, "I am not going to do that." And he said, our whole country went to war just to prevent this very thing, and now we're going to spring this on the people. And because of his refusal, everything in this country, our history is written different. And I don't know if you realize this, but the most historic election in this country is not the first one, the one that got Washington into office. You know which one it was? It was the second one that got John Adams. You say, why? Because up to that time, nations changed leadership one of two ways. The king died and his son took over, or a revolution happened and they killed the king and installed somebody else. This was the first time in history the government of a nation was changed by voting. No one had ever done that before. And it is to George Washington's credit that he got up and walked out of that White House and left it behind. We've got a former president that cannot leave the White House behind right now. He's chasing the real president all over the country. Did you know that Barack Obama wanted to build his library in the form of the White House? And I'll tell you why, because he thinks somebody's going to put him back in the White House. He does. Either with guns or with votes next time the election comes around. So MacArthur didn't make it. Not that I would love to get to heaven and find out that I'm wrong. And Patton didn't make it, and I'd love to find out I'm wrong there. But George Washington made it. I'll tell you who made it. Robert E. Lee made it. You know, I laugh at Southerners. I do. And I like Southerners. Don't think because I laugh at them. I just, you know, like they lost. I mean, get over it. I had a friend of mine, a Southern pastor, real good guy. And he pastors in Mississippi, and I was talking to him, and this was back when our oldest son, John, was about to get married. And I said, John's getting married. He says, really, when? I said, April 26th. I said, that's the day before my birthday. He said, is your birthday April 27th? I said, yeah. I said, that's the birthday of another great American. He said, who? I said, Ulysses S. Grant. He goes, it's just a drunk. I said, well, he whipped you. You know, guys, you know what you don't want to do? You don't want to come in like from a weekend, you know, when you were lost. You don't want to come in from a wild weekend with your arm in a sling and a bandage around your head and you're limping and say, what happened? I got in a fight over the weekend. How big was the guy? He's about right there. He only had one arm. He was drunk. I mean, you know what you want to say? Oh, the guy was 8 feet tall. He had 4 arms. He said, you know what would have happened if he'd have sobered up? I said, yeah, the war would have been over sooner. And so I mock him for that, but I will tell you something. I love them. I really do. They are something else. And I love it when they go, they always say, well, you know, the South had the generals. And I said, yeah, and I said, remember that great political leader, Jefferson Davis? But I'll tell you something. Robert E. Lee was a saved man. Stonewall Jackson was a saved man. Jeb Stuart was a saved man. They used to say this. Jackson taught Sunday school. And they used to say that when Jackson took a town, you know what the first thing he did was? You know, they'd pillage, burn, whatever, look for political prisoners or whatever. The first thing, every time Jackson took a city or a town in a battle, the first thing they did was got all of the whiskey and poured it in the street. They knew that was going to happen. And Robert E. Lee was a saved man. I have no doubt about it. If you know anything about his father was Light Horse Harry Lee. He was a cavalryman, but he was a drunk. He wasn't a very good dad. But Robert E. Lee overcame that. And Robert E. Lee, when you get up there, you're going to see him in heaven. You say, why? Because of the M, that mighty, not that many. It says, not many wise. There is no evidence that Einstein was saved. He was a smart man. There's no doubt about that. But I don't know, how can you be that smart and not be smart enough to trust Christ? There's just something wrong with that, guys. And maybe he got saved, and we don't know about it. But there's no evidence that Albert Einstein got saved. There's no evidence that Stephen Hawking is saved. I feel bad for that guy because he's in that wheelchair and he's twisted up and crippled up. And, I'm sure he's got plenty of money and people take care of him. But when you think about this, you walk from here when this service is over. You walk out to your car. You are doing something that a man probably twice as smart as you, 3 times as smart as you, can't even do. I don't even know if he can feed himself. But he's a big evolutionist, and as far as I know, he hadn't trusted Jesus Christ as personal Savior. Carl Sagan, he wrote a book on the cosmos. You know how it began? In the beginning was the Big Bang. Just a slap right in the face of God. And he went to hell. But Werner von Braun, that guy was saved. He was the one that came out of Germany. He worked on the V1 and V2 rockets. After the war, he was brought over here. And he really was the father of our space program. He was the father of everything goes on over here at Vandenberg or down at Cape Canaveral, everything that NASA is supposed to be doing. He was the father of it, Werner von Braun. A guy was a genius, but it wasn't his genius that got him to heaven. It was the burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. It was the blood of Jesus Christ. You know what he did? I'll tell you what he did to get saved. Did the same thing you did. He told God, I don't deserve heaven, but you bought it for me with the blood of Christ. Please give me that gift of eternal life. Because of an M. Doesn't say not any wise, it says not many. I want you to look at Psalm 101. Seems like such a little thing. When David wrote this psalm, he said this, I will sing of the mercy and judgment unto thee, of mercy and judgment unto thee, O Lord, will I sing. He says, I will sing. Guys, what if it said this? I will drop the G. I will sin. You say, oh, well, why would anybody say that? Come on, you said it. You said it. You might not have said it out loud, but there's not a person here that's sinless. Isn't that true? And you didn't fall into sin. Don't you love that? Did you hear about so-and-so? They fell into sin. Nobody falls into sin. Nobody is. No, listen, not one person, including me, not one person in this room, you are not a victim of your sin. You are a volunteer. You thought about it. You thought about not doing it, and you chose to do it. You know what you said? You might not have said those three words, but you said, I will sin. Adam said that, and look what has happened to this world. One fruit, one rule, one rule. You know, I don't know if I told you this. I was telling somebody the other day, you know, I see the teenagers, and teenagers get out of church, and you ask a teenager why they get out of church, and they'll go, too many rules. This got too many rules. I can't take so many rules. Hey, teenager, can I give you some advice or some information? Adam only had one rule. Could you imagine a life where what if somebody said this, you do anything you want, there's only one thing you're not allowed to do. Don't you figure you could handle that? And all it was don't eat from that tree. Man, he didn't. I mean, there's all that other stuff they could eat. And all he did is look at that tree. Can't eat that tree. Don't eat from that. Well, if we can't eat from it, why do you have to put it in the middle of the living room? Should have put it out behind the garage. I didn't have to look at it every day. He knew exactly what he did before he took the fruit. You know what he said? I will sin. And that damned him, damned you, damned me, and it's only the redemption of God himself that takes care of that. Isn't that true? He said, I will sin. This man, David, didn't he say, I will sin once? We know about it, don't we? He said, I will sin. My goodness, he thought he was just going to have one night fling. He ended up murdering somebody. Murdering his woman's wife, or his woman's husband. Absalom. He said, I will sin. He said, I am going to be the king of this country, and I will kill my own father if I have to do it. You ever stop and think about it? You know, one of the things about monarchies that amazes me is how many times fathers kill sons, sons kill fathers, brothers kill brothers. I mean, it kind of reminded me of how I grew up. But Absalom said, I will sin. I will sin. He ended up hanging in a tree with a bunch of arrows in him. But didn't David get right with God? Well, I'll tell you something, guys. Remember, restore unto me the joy of thy salvation? He must have got it. Because he wrote some of this stuff after that. And he got the joy. In fact, you have read things that he wrote after he said, I will sin. And then once he got that sin taken care of, he says, you know, I think I'll throw a G on the end of that. I think I will sing. And can I give you some advice? Next time that little phrase comes in, you're tempted to do something, say, I will sin. Throw a G on there and just start singing. Just say, you know what, I think I'll just sing instead. Then it won't be hard on you. It'll be hard on everybody around you, but it won't be hard on you. But he got to where he could sing. You know Fanny Crosby? Fanny Crosby was the blind lady, and she was made blind by an inept doctor when she was an infant. She never really remembered what red looked like. She never saw a blue sky. She never saw a sunrise. You ever see a sunrise? How many sunrises? I bet you can't count how many beautiful sunrises or beautiful sunsets you've seen. Isn't that true? And blue, and red, and green, and yellow, and I pastored in upstate New York, And if a fall came through there, man, the leaves were just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And she never saw any of that. And she was blind because some inept doctor made her blind. I say this, if Fanny Crosby were alive today, she'd be a millionaire. Oh, she'd still be blind, but she'd be a millionaire from the lawsuit, wouldn't she? And bitter from the process. Because there's something about getting that check never does take care of what's in the heart. But instead, you know what happened? She got saved. And when she got saved, she said, you know what I think I'll do? I think I will sing. Oh, man, aren't you glad she said that? Pick up that songbook there and just flip through there. I think we sang a Fanny Crosby song tonight. I think we sang one last night. Say, well, what's the chances of that? Well, like 1 in 7,000. She wrote 7,000 of them. 7,000 hymns, songs, poems about the Savior. Isn't it amazing? You talk to somebody and they complain about this and complain about that. What was this kid that killed somebody, the affluenza? He didn't know any better and he killed somebody. Here was this lady. By today's standard, we would say, oh, she has the right to kill somebody because she just had a hard life. Nope, she just said, I will sing. You know who said, I will sing? Charles Wesley. His brother John Wesley was the preacher that was responsible for saving England from a revolution. Boy, I'll tell you what, when you got that on your resume, that's going to shine in heaven, don't you think? Can you imagine going to heaven and having saved your country from a revolution? And John Wesley is the famous of the two. But I got to admit, I like Charles. And I like what this guy wrote. And I like And Can It Be? I like For 1,000 Tongues to Sing. I love what Charles Wesley wrote. I always say this. If you read just one verse of a song that Charles Wesley wrote, there is more of a relationship between the sinner and the Savior, the Creator, than there is an entire contemporary laser light show. There's just nothing in those 7-Eleven songs, meet Jesus in a cup of coffee, I feel better about myself now. Hey guys, nobody needs that stuff. Those guys, aren't you glad Wesley said, I will sing? You know, I had somebody tell me they wouldn't sing his songs because he was a Methodist, not a Baptist. And I'm trying to remember which one it was. I think he wrote, Hark the Herald Angels Sing. Well, I hope you never sing that one. Martin Luther, he wrote, A Mighty Fortress is Our God. I had a guy say, I won't sing that because a Lutheran wrote it. I said, well, don't sing Away in a Manger. He wrote that too. Guys, aren't you glad aren't you glad we got a whole book filled with the works that they did because at some point they said, I will sing. One letter. One letter. Take a look, if you will, at Matthew chapter 20. Matthew chapter 20. Look at verse 29. As they departed from Jericho, a great multitude followed him. And behold, 2 blind men, sitting by the wayside, when they heard that Jesus passed by, cried out, saying, Have mercy on us, O Lord, thou Son of David. And the multitude rebuked them because they should hold their peace. But they cried the more, saying, Have mercy on us, O Lord, thou Son of David. And Jesus stood still and called them and said, what will ye that I shall do unto you? And they say unto him, Lord, that our eyes may be opened. So Jesus had compassion on them and touched their eyes, and immediately their eyes received sight, and they followed him. You know what catches my attention? They said, we want our eyes to be open. And it says he touched their eyes, and immediately their eyes. Aren't you glad it was both eyes, not one? I'm glad for the yes. You say why? Because when Jesus does something, it's complete. If he'd have given one eye sight and the other one not, that's kind of like getting the thing halfway done, isn't it? Let me ask you something. When you got saved, did you get it all? You know, if I could see those 2 eyes, one eye is salvation, the other one is that brand new life. And I have never met anybody yet that I said, hey, did you get saved? Sure did. Did you get a new life? Oh, you know what? I didn't get that part. Everybody got that part. Isn't that right? Everybody got that part. They might have messed up that new life just as surely as they messed up the old one. You know, I get guys come up to me. I just can't understand it. Now, ladies, bear with me. Don't leave me. Don't shut me off. Let me finish my statement before you start throwing things. Women say some stupid things. Well, you know they do. Remember, lady, that probably the stupidest thing you ever said? I do. Anyway, but let me say this. Men also say some stupid things. Like, will you? Anyway, but, and here's what I don't believe. I don't believe that women say things that are more stupid than men. I really don't. I don't think men say things that are more stupid than women. I think men and women say equally stupid things. Here's the difference. When a woman says something stupid, it's kind of funny. And everybody gets a laugh. And only a man can say something stupid and think it's oracle. A man says something stupid, he thinks it ought to be etched in stone and memorized by children. Only a man can say something stupid and finish it with, huh? Let me tell you a question I have had. I do not know how many men have asked me this question. I have never had a woman ask me this question. I have had, I don't know how many, I mean countless. Guys come up and go, you know, before I got saved, my life was a mess. Now I got saved, my life's still a mess. I thought I got a new life. Huh? And I just give them the simplest answer, something they can understand. I said, well, the reason that your new life is a mess is because the same idiot that was running the first one is running the second one. You. Because you know what some people did when they got saved? They got this crazy idea that now that they're saved, they thought they knew how to run a life. Guys, look. Well, what? How long did it take you to get saved? I mean the prayer. 60 seconds? 2 whole minutes? What can you learn about life in 2 minutes praying? Not enough. Trust me. Look, there's no nice way to say this, so I'll just say it. You got saved. You didn't get smart. Best thing you can do is take that new life. You get that one eye, that's that salvation. You take that other eye and just hand it off to him and say, take care of it. Brother, I'll tell you what. Can I ask you a question? If you can trust him with your soul, why can't you trust him with your life? I have never understood that. I have never understood people that they could put their entire eternity. Hey, let me ask you a question. Is there anybody in here, any saved person in here, you are worried about where you're going to be 10,000 years from tonight? Because you know 10,000 years from tonight, you're going to be in heaven, right? So you're trusting Jesus with, you're not trusting the Lord with 10,000, but way past that, like 10 million, 10 billion. Now we're getting near the national debt. But guys, here's what I'm saying. This amazes me. You're sitting here tonight and you can trust Jesus Christ with 10,000 years from tonight, but you can't trust him with 10. You don't know where you'll be 10 years from now, and you're afraid if you give him your life, he might change your plans. You know what I see happens to most Christians? They hear a knock at their back door, and they open up the back door, and there stands the devil. You're the devil. Yeah, I sure am. Oh, what do you want? I want you to serve me. I want you to worship me. I want you to live for me. Oh, no. Oh, no, because you might change my plans for my life. You might make me do something I don't want to do. No, I'm not serving you. So you leave him on the back porch, and then there's a knock at the front door, and you open it up. It's the Lord. Well, Lord, wow, that's wonderful. I'm so glad you're here. What do you want? I want you to serve me. I want you to worship me. I want you to give me your life. Well, no. You might change my plans for my life. You might make me do something I don't want to do. Guys, we've got Christians, they don't want the devil to run their life, and they don't want God to run their life for the same reason. For the same reason. I'm telling you, the God that saves you, and he is worth serving. He is worth serving. And when I got saved, I got the whole smash. I got to tell you this. I still use CDs. I know that's kind of old. And here's what happens. I go buy this word processing program, and all I want is a word processing program, and you cannot buy a disc with a word processing program. You buy a disc, and it has about 5 programs. It has a word processing program, which I want. It has a database, not looking for a date. It has a spreadsheet, not playing the horses. It has some kind of presentation thing, and it has a calendar. That's usually the 5. And I only want one. And I put this disc in my computer. And it doesn't put those on there. It asks me what do I want. It said, do you want all 5 of these? Well, no, actually, I only want 1. Or do you just want 1? Or do you want 2 or 3 or 4? Just pick which ones you want loaded and load that one and don't load the rest up. I load all 5 every time. I put the calendar on there. I put the database on there. I put that presentation thing on there. I put it all on there. Say why? Because there's just something about knowing you got it all. I mean, I got 4 programs on there I'll never open, never use, couldn't care less about them, but I just like knowing I got them. That's how my salvation was. I got it all, guys. But I got news for you. So did you. There is not one person, not in this room, not in this country, not on this planet. There's not one person that got saved that got 99%. Every one of us got 100% because when God saves you, He does a complete job, doesn't He? He doesn't fix an eye. He takes care of both of them. I want you to go to 1 Corinthians chapter 14. In 1 Corinthians chapter 14, this is the famous chapter on tongues and unknown tongues, and people get in this and get all twirled around like they're on some kind of a carnival ride. And he says this in verse 20, "Brethren, be not children in understanding, howbeit in malice be ye children." Did you ever wonder why he says that? Why does he tell us in malice to be children? Did you ever see a kid? Did you ever watch a kid in malice? Here's what a kid does. This kid gets mad at his friend and says, "I never play with him again in my whole life." And what's he doing 30 minutes later? Come on, what's he doing? Playing with him. That's exactly what the Lord told you to do. He knows you're going to get mad. The problem with us is we stay mad. Even if we don't we don't stay mad, we just still stay like, I want to kill him anyway. He said, go ahead and get mad. Then get over it. That's what a kid does. In malice be ye children, but in understanding be men. He says be men. And I think that is good. Now, ladies, I am sorry, this is a fact. Women think with their hearts. That is needed. And you know who needs that? Whoever is between the woman and the man, like the kid. Okay? Men think with their brains. Nothing personal, lady. Women think with their hearts. Kid falls down. Pop says, "Get up, boy. Put that arm back on. You'll be okay. You got a game to play." And mom says, "Oh, honey, you come here, you come here." I mean, somebody's got to have some compassion. Nothing worse than a bunch of men walking around like women. "Oh, I just care about everybody." I don't believe it. I don't believe it. And if you do, I'm worried about you. Okay? Guys, let me tell you what, you know what's happened to our country? I told you this nation is now run by overbearing women and effeminate men. Now let me make my case. Is it wrong to murder somebody? I'm talking about cold-blooded murder. I'm not talking about capital punishment. I'm talking about go out and murder somebody. Is it wrong? Absolutely. Without excuse. And then they made a movie about this woman, and her husband mistreated her, abused her, and so rather than leave him or whatever, she waited till he was asleep, poured gasoline on him, set him on fire. And got acquitted. Because now when somebody does something wrong, we look at it like a woman. Well, yeah, but he deserved that. He abused her. Hey, used to be wrong to go shoot somebody, but now if the kid shoots somebody, goes, but he was bullied at school and that's why he did it. That is a woman's way of looking at it. You know what a man says? You don't go shoot people. He said, in understanding, be men. You know what most people do? They drop the N off of that. In understanding, be me. Because there's one thing about Christians. They all figure they are the epitome of what a Christian should be. I have never met a Christian that didn't think, I am exactly what God needs. Now you're saying, oh, I don't think that. Well, you must, because you never change anything. And if the Lord touches your heart at an invitation, you're going to still stay right where you are. You're not going to alter anything, so you must think you're okay. But he said, understanding, be men, don't be me. And we've just all got this idea that whatever I think everybody should understand, everybody should agree with me. Guys, that is not life. We should be men, but you don't want to be me. I don't want to be you, okay? And we don't want to be each other. So we have to think in understanding. We have to think like men. One last. Go to Ezekiel chapter 22. Oh my, what an expensive letter this is. In Ezekiel chapter 22, Israel, God's chosen people, Israel, God's nation, was far from God. They were wicked, they were ungodly, hard-hearted. And he says this. He said, I sought for a man among them that should make up the hedge and stand in the gap before me for the land, that I should not destroy it, but I found, what's it say? None. Take the N off that word. You say, well, if you only found one, what could one do? Let's find out. Go back to Numbers chapter 14. Let's see if there's a value to one. God got mad. He got mad at Israel in Numbers chapter 14. Look what he says to Moses. In verse 12, he said, I will smite them with the pestilence and disinherit them, and will make of thee a greater nation and mightier than they. Now here's how I've always seen that. I can see God saying to Moses, here's what I'm going to do to Israel. I'm going to smite them with the pestilence and disinherit them. And I'm going, no, and make a greater nation out of you. No kidding. Really? The nation of Moses. That's like going to work and the boss comes to see. I mean, the guy that owns it says, your supervisor, I am telling you, I'm so fed up with your supervisor, and I am going to fire him. Oh, no. Yeah, and I'm going to make you the supervisor. Oh, kidding. When do I move into his office? So can I ask you a question? Didn't God just say he's going to kill Israel and eliminate them and make Moses the great nation? So why to this day do we talk about the nation of Israel? Why do we not talk about the nation of Moses? It should be the nation of Moses, right? Look at verse 19. Here's what Moses said. Pardon, I beseech thee, the iniquity of this people according unto the greatness of thy mercy. And as thou hast forgiven this people from Egypt, even until now. And in verse 20 is one of the most remarkable statements in the Bible. How many times in the Bible do you read where God told somebody, you go do this, and they reported back to God and said, I did what you told me, I did what you told me, I did what you told me, right? But look what God says to the dirt ball in verse 20. And the Lord said, I have pardoned according to thy word. This time God said to the man, I did what you told me. Do you know why there's no nation of Moses today? Do you know why there is still a nation of Israel today when God said, I'm going to destroy him? One. His name was Moses. It wasn't even Moses and Aaron. You say, oh man, what could one man do? Change history. This entire book would have been written different, but for one letter. He found one. God found one man. And that one man stood between God, God's judgment, and the nation of Israel. And so now he comes to Ezekiel chapter 22, and he said, I sought for a man. He didn't say he's looking for a group. He's not looking for an army. You know what our whole problem is? Our whole problem is we're always looking for an army to join. We're always looking for somebody to join us. We're scared to death to stand alone. I like these guys who send out a letter, just come and join arms and we'll have a united front. Baptists united? Are you kidding? Only about eating. But one. He said, I just want one man. I sought for a man among them that should make up the hedge and stand in the gap for me for the land, that I should not destroy it. Now think about this. What if that verse said, but I found one? Wasn't he only looking for one? Guys, he couldn't find one. He could not find one. You know what happened? The judgment of God fell on Israel. Man, it was horrible. There was one back there in Numbers chapter 14. His name was Moses. There was not one here. Not one man to stand in the gap. You know what I've often wondered, people? I have often wondered if God looks down at us as a nation, because you know this nation was a good nation. You know that this nation stood for the Lord and stood for the Bible. I've got some of my Bible-believing brethren like to think that America's been bad from out of the gate, and they have the opinion of America the same thing Muslims think. We're the great Satan. I've never believed that. I think America, now I don't believe we've replaced Israel, but I think that this nation chose God at its inception, and God blessed us marvelously. You don't really think it's our natural resources, do you? Because Africa's got a whole lot more natural resources than we do. I mean, there's all kinds of nations have far more than we have. How come Saudi Arabia has so much oil and only the sheiks are rich and the people are poor? Guys, God bless this country because this country chose the God of the Bible to be their God. But you also have to know that we're far from God, don't you? And you have got to believe that if this nation does not alter its course, God is going to drop the hammer on us. Some of my brethren, they can't wait for that to happen. I don't understand it. Guys, we're all on this boat. Why would you want it to sink? But I want you to know this. This is what I think. This seems to be a history with God. You know what I think he was doing with Moses? I think he's testing him. If I say I'm going to kill Israel and make Moses a greater nation, I wonder how Moses will handle this. I wonder if he'll be the one man that will stem the tide and keep me from killing Israel. And he was. Now he looks at us. We've got 310 million people. I don't know how that breaks down to men and women. But if God ever judges this country, I'm going to tell you when he's going to do it. He's going to do it after he's gone from coast to coast and from border to border. And he has checked the heart of every Christian man in this country because he just wants one. I just want to find one that will stand, that will ask me. I pray every day, guys. I ask God every day, pardon America. And I ask him to revive America. If he pardons America, we don't get the judgment, right? And he gets nothing. So I say, God, pardon us and revive us. Because if he pardons us, we don't get killed. But if he revives us, he gets worship, right? And I've told him this. You may not appreciate this, but I tell him, I said, if you're not going to revive us, don't pardon us. If you're not going to get something, don't give us nothing. But isn't it sad? Remember I told you last night, what did John Knox pray? Give me Scotland or I die. And that was the man that changed the history of that nation. And God looks at this country, and you know what he's looking for? You say, we just need to be a strong army. He only needs one. You understand how morally bankrupt, how lacking in character a nation is when God looks at 300 million people and can't find one man? Doesn't matter how much iron you pump. It doesn't matter how tough you think you are. Not one man. Not one. I found none. If it just said, I found one, what a difference. I'd like you to stand with your heads bowed.